What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 5. We have a special guest joined with us today. But if you're watching, don't judge my beard. My electricity was out this morning, and I couldn't wash it or dry it. It's tad secret. I blow dry my beard so it doesn't look so curly. If you're watching, I'm sorry. So that gives you an excuse just to listen, not to watch the video. You can find us on all platforms, YouTube. That's the last one we want you to watch. But Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Cloud, what is it?
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud, and all that stuff. So, Jeremy?
I think that's it. I think you named them all.
Well, I didn't have them written down, so I just kind of winged it. So
there we go. Well, today we have a special guest on today, and he is a longtime friend. I've known Duane at least for 20 years and been able to hang out with him, work with him in various ways in the past 20 years. His name is Duane NeSmith. We're so glad to have you. Duane is he's married to Mary, and he's got a daughter, and he's got two grandchildren. He has over 35 years of youth ministry experience and currently serves as the associate pastor and as pastor of education and administration at First Baptist Church in Frankston, Texas, out in East Texas. And coincidentally, we've had somebody from North Texas, South Texas, and now we're over in East Texas. And so next
week, we're going to have Keith, hopefully, and he's so west that he's in New Mexico. So
look at this. We made a nice little diamond shape. So
now we got to find someone in the central. Well, I guess I'm in Central Texas. I guess we're both in Central Texas. So I guess we knocked it out.
We're trying to cover all the bases. Yeah. No discrimination. So
no.
Duane's the kind of guy that when I was a young man, I got to go out to his church, and I was up in his ceiling looking at some speakers, and I stepped on a roll of carpet, because every good church puts their carpet that's left over in the ceiling, right, in the attic. Stepped on the carpet, fell through the ceiling, right, and I'm and come downstairs, and he's just like, "Don't worry, we'll take care of it. No one will even know Sunday morning." That's the kind of guy Duane is. So, Duane, say hello. Tell us something that I missed about you, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeremy and Jacob. It's good to be with you. Looking forward to a great time together and sharing about a passion that we all have in common. That's youth ministry, and look forward to it. Spent a lot of time at camps and Super Summer over the years, and so have met a lot of folks out there, including you two guys at Highland Lakes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I had mentioned already that you had spent 35 years in the youth ministry.
I read 35 years of youth ministry, not just bouncing back and forth, right?
That's right. 35 years in youth ministry.
Oh, wow.
Two churches?
After seminary, well, three where I'm at now, including where I'm at now. So I was at my first church for about 3 years, and then I was at Beat Eyes for about 18, and been here at Frankston for 13. So,
wow. Gotcha. Well, I read a statistic yesterday, and last year, I don't know how they get these numbers, but over 29% of pastors thought about quitting last year. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today. Longevity in the ministry, being in it for the long haul, serving God, and doing what He's called you to do. And how in the world do you do that, Duane?
Well, the balance is a key thing, I think, as far as being able to stay long term. One, you got to take care of your own spiritual condition with your own daily quiet time, your own prayer time, spending time with God, and having clear direction for your own personal life, your family life, and your ministry. Keeping balance with your family, making sure that they're a priority and important, and that you give them the time they need. It's not doing too much honor to God to give all your attention to your church family and ignore your own personal family. And I think probably, if we're honest, we've all struggled with that balance, and we're better at it sometimes than others. And maybe there's the makeup time, and you try to make it make up what you need to make up in whichever area, but usually the family is what suffers. So I encourage you, don't make your family suffer for your own ministry.
Yeah.
And realize there are going to be hard days. Everybody has realized that in the last year with the pandemic going on, that those were hard days of ministry, but there's going to be days when people give you a hard time, and it may be your pastor, it may be somebody in your church, maybe a member, maybe one of your students who kind of leads a revolt against you.
Yeah.
You know,
been there.
So you got to be ready for hard days. This, God didn't promise the rose garden. If he did, he reminded us that rose bushes have thorns. And so we have to be prepared for all of it.
That's rich.
And just know that you're going to stick it out. It's not just something that, well, it got hard, so I'm going to go sell cars. They're going to be hard days. You got to be ready for them and prepared to say, I'm here for the long term,
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good.
One story I had was a mother in my youth group told me just after I got to the church, you won't be here till my child graduates. And I looked at her and I said, well, I hope I am. I actually saw her grandchildren graduate.
Wow.
So what
That's
I'm saying
awesome.
is, don't think they're not going to be hard days, but be prepared to stay where God plants you and not run when it gets tough.
Yeah, that's really good. I think in those moments, like in that, like those crunch time, those times where you feel like you should run, you just kind of default to what you just said, or is there something more specific that we can lean into that would help, maybe refocus us or.
Yeah, never be afraid to examine where God's calling you to. I mean, God may be saying, hey, you know what? It's time for you to move. There's your ministry here's done. You've done all you can do and completed what I've called you here to do. And maybe it is time to move. But I think too many times that people in ministry cut and run before God's through with them somewhere because it's got tough. They want to go live on the honeymoon experience every 2-3 years. Oh, wow. And we all know you kind of get that grace period of honeymoon for a couple of 3 years at a church if you're fortunate. And that's what a lot of guys do. They live out their honeymoon time and then they go to the next church for their honeymoon time there. And it's like, that's when ministry gets tough, when you get into the trenches and people know you and you know people.
Yeah.
And you have to say, I'm here for the long haul, and make that decision and not cut and run, like I said, just because it got hard. But if God's really moving you, there's steps for that too. And there's a time to go. There really is a time to go and time to move on.
Right. Yeah, I think I read, statistically speaking, youth ministers last 12 to 18 months. Is that correct?
There are different numbers depending on who you hear from. One of my heroes in youth ministry, Richard Ross, that was his early numbers. But as of late, I've heard, usually now it's more 3 to 5 years. If what I've heard is correct, you can hear numbers from anywhere.
Sure.
And dealing with numbers, your numbers are the only ones that matter. Where you're at, what you're doing, what God's called you to, how long God calls you to stay there. If God calls you someplace for a year, okay.
Yeah.
If God calls you to stay a decade, stay a decade.
Yeah.
Whatever that is for you in God's calling at that place is what the most important calling is. I do think, like I said, a lot of guys just try to cut and run too quick because it got a little hard.
Yeah. Somebody
hurt their feelings. and yes, I'm a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of guy. So
that's all right. In what are the advantages of being at that? Like you said, you've been there in Frankston for 13 years. Like, why? I mean, why would you want to be there so long? Just from just what do you see? Like, what are the advantages? What do you see as how do you see God moving in that time period, I guess?
I preface it with the fact that I peak out kind of high on loyalty in my personality traits. And when people see loyalty to their church, they're loyal to you. I mean, I can go back and tell personal stories of some very difficult times in my life, even here. And this church stood beside me and supported me, encouraged me, and that makes me want to stay and give back all the more. I think it's a two-way street. Churches, you're called there to minister, but they're also called to minister to you. And if they stick beside you, you have found a church home that loves you and cares about you, and you show them that they love and care about you. Matter of fact, when I came here to Frankston, that was one of the questions in my opening interview. If our church loves you, will you love us back? And when they asked it, I thought, that is such a strange question, but it's true.
That is really good. Yeah.
It's a two-way street. You love me, I love you, and let's stick together and let's work together and let's reach people for Christ together and love our community and reach our community together. I think that the long-term people have a better relationship with their people. They know where the septic tank is, so to speak, and they know where to step and where not to step.
Yeah.
And you learn quirks, but you know where Mrs. Johnson sits on Sunday morning, and you know not to get in her pew. And you kind of learn their family trees, and you learn, we all have limbs we might like to cut off. But learning your people and knowing your people helps you to minister to them. If you don't know your people, and it takes more than 2 or 3 years to get to know your people, really get to know them, then it helps you know how to minister to them. As I've transitioned from being the youth minister here to being the associate pastor here, and I went from taking care of the youth to more of the responsibility of taking care of our senior adults. It was an easy transition because I already knew them and I already love them, and I care about them, and I know their families, and I know this lady's daughter and son go here, and this, I know their history with being here, so it made an easy transition. Not everybody transitions from youth to senior adult ministry, but hey, it works. They're a lot alike, by the
way. That's funny.
I would not disagree. I mean, I think everything that you said is so imperative to the youth ministry, and I think about, the investment, committing to what God has called you to do, and just investing your life, your family in that place that He's called you to serve. I just love that, Duane, the way you put it. That was good. And so part of that transition, did you feel like, did you feel, I mean, you said it was easy. Did you feel like God specifically said, hey, 35 years, that's good?
I mean, I would be lying if I said it wasn't hard in some ways. I mean, youth ministry has been my passion and love for 35 years, and you don't just walk away from it. And I still keep my toes in a few places, Super Summer and some things like that, and where I'm needed, trying to tend to the youth here, with just helping is wherever they need it. But and I think that's another important aspect for youth ministry, is realizing, yes, you're the youth minister, you're the youth pastor, you're the youth director, whatever your church calls you. Don't get hung up on the title. Do your job. Meet the needs of your people, but meet the needs of all your people. Just because they're not a youth or don't have a youth, don't miss the opportunity to get to know that family, because one, they may be your next best youth sponsor, youth worker, youth minister. But if you stay long enough, they may be your future ministry territory. And I think too many times we get hung up on a job description. So, well, that's not my job. Well, if that's your attitude, maybe you need to check your calling to ministry, because most of us are the second or maybe third staff member at a medium to small size church. And you can never afford to have the attitude, that's not my job. Yesterday, I was vacuuming floors, moving chairs, and resetting the church from Easter. Is that my job? Not necessarily, but it needed to be done, so we did it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of doing what needs to be done and meeting the needs of your entire church. So, yes, you're youth pastors, and that's your passion, that's your calling. But you might have to go to preteen camp. Well, wow, what am I doing there? Well, you're building relationships with those future youth if you're going to stay.
That's right.
So the question I have is, and and it kind of involves this one. How do you know that it's God calling you? Like you talked about the honeymoon period. How do you know that God's calling you elsewhere and not you're giving up on your honeymoon phase is over, or even with when you transition to the associate pastor or whatever? How did you know that was God calling you and not just like a inner thing? Like, hey, I'm kind of done with this. Time to move on.
I think God can give you that direction, and it's more of an inner peace thing. It's very subjective. I'm not going to say there's any 10 steps to finding this answer out, and that's what makes it difficult to know whether it's time to go, time to stay, time to move on in ministry. I didn't, I have a loyalty issue, I guess, probably. and I didn't really want to leave youth ministry, but as I began to pray and look at it and talk with my pastor and some friends, it just began to make sense that would be a good transition for me here. And like I said, I wholeheartedly love all of my senior adults, and I'm passionately trying to work and minister with them now, just like I ever did with the youth. And we have a great time. If we can ever fully get back together after COVID, of course, now most of my super senior saints are all vaccinated. So we're going to start having meetings again soon and getting back to the fun stuff of doing ministry together. But it's not, like I said, it's not, to me, I don't think there's 3 or 4 boxes you can check. I think it's very personal. It's part of that relationship with God that you've got to maintain, of keeping that relationship open with him to seek his will for your life and your ministry. If you're married, sometimes it's listening to your wife or your husband, as the case may be. Your spouse, sometimes my spouse, I know, has a better radar on some things than I do. Mm-hmm. And she could always tell me, that little girl's got a crush on you. And I'm like, really? Women, your wives, and I'm talking to 2 guys, so I'm going to speak in that generic term here, but your wives have some pretty good perceptions about your ministry and what's going on. And listening to your spouse is a good idea. It's always a good idea.
And you've been married for
a long time. It's 1991. You do the math.
1991.
That's 29 years.
29. Yeah, we're headed to 30 here.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome stuff.
Yeah, she's taught me a lot in 30 years.
Oh, she is too sweet. I've had the pleasure of visiting with Miss Mary for several times, and she is just too sweet. So. And I mean, this is kind of a silly random question. I guess you just play different games. You don't blend up Happy Meals and give those to the seniors. You just kind of play bridge and poker and stuff like that now instead.
You learn dominoes, brother. You learn dominoes. You better learn to play 42 if you're going to hang with me.
Did you have to learn how to quilt?
We do have some quilters. I'm not a quilter. I love quilts. Love watching them. I encourage them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But our first thing is going to be a picnic on the patio here at the end of April, and we're going to have hamburgers. And I'm not blending them up. So,
could you imagine their face? You grab a blender and just start tossing them in. Like, all right, we're going to play a game.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
You can transfer some of the games, just not all of them.
Eating baby food type thing.
Yeah, maybe not.
Good times. Jacob, did you have a follow up to that, or?
I have a question, and I don't want you to take offense to this. Obviously, you're not a young chicken anymore. How did you keep? Obviously, as I get older, I'm wearing out, and I'm 30 years old, and I'm tired still from D now. And
that was a month ago.
Yeah, that was almost a month. Actually, exactly a month from today. How did you keep the energy to do it for 35 years?
You fill your waterbed with Geritol. You just stay passionate, brother. You just stay passionate, and you take the time to rest that you need. God created the world in 6 days, and he took a vacation day on the 7th.
Yeah.
Don't not take your vacations. Don't not take your days off. Take those times to rest when you need them. I always had a habit of going to conclave and always went the day before just to shut down and rest. Met with a good friend named Brian Hall, and we would go to dinner the night before conclave and enjoy those times and just rested and kicked back and laughed and went to bed early that night like old folks do. And But make sure you take some time to retreat and rest. Most any of the camps will give you a night or two at their facilities for free if you're a minister on staff. Most of them will let you bring your family if you have that ability to bring family, or just you yourself get away and retreat and refresh yourself. There's no harm in taking the day off after a D-Now weekend. Some of us never got, so a lot of times we don't get that luxury. I admit that's a luxury.
Yeah.
But if you have a good enough relationship with your pastor and say, look, I've had a long weekend. I just need to rest tomorrow. And so I'll see you on Tuesday. And most of the time pastors understand that and will work with you. But take the time you need to rest, but don't be afraid to work hard either. I mean, there is a certain amount of work ethic that a lot of people, oh, you're a ministry, you golf every afternoon and you sleep in and, it's kind of like the policeman at the donut shop analogy. They're always at the donut shop. Well, there's a lot of youth ministry analogies out there. Don't be afraid of some good old fashioned hard work. And you're going to do it if you're doing your ministry, but don't be afraid of it either and run away from it and neglect what you need to get done. Nobody ever got fired for loving their youth, but they got fired for not doing their administrative duties back at the office.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good. So the phrase "I'll sleep when I'm dead" that's not a valid phrase.
Well, the Bible refers to being asleep most of the time when it talks about dying, and you will die early if you just keep running.
That's
just take the time to rest though when you need it, but don't be afraid of the work either. You're going to put the work in on D-Now weekend. Don't worry.
Oh yeah. Especially this year was difficult because we did ours in person. We did it in person, but we kept everything on campus, so it was. You don't think about it, how much it takes to entertain 15, 20 students for when they can't leave a place.
Yeah. So. That reminds me of something else. As far as working hard, don't be afraid to delegate. And when you delegate, give it to a trusted volunteer and let them do it. Yeah. They may not do it as well as you. They may not do it like you think you want it done. But give it to them and let them do it. Let them be responsible. Like recreation at D-Now. You might need to be in charge of that, but meals, find you a church hostess that loves to cook and do the meal, and don't worry about let him or her plan those meals and run those meals and buy the supplies, and let them take that load off of yourself. Delegate where you can. You may need to be the spiritual leader that weekend, but you don't need to be the one who's getting up early and going to get the donuts.
Yeah.
Somebody else can make the 5 a.m. Krispy Kreme run.
There you go. Yes, sir.
So,
well, can you maybe share one of your wildest and craziest stories, without divulging and or holding anybody accountable or illegal, or they might get arrested, stories from youth ministry?
I'm going to take the fifth on that, I think. To protect the innocent. There are a lot of stories, as you can imagine, over the years, just funny, crazy things that happen with other youth ministers and camping experiences of children not on their meds and having to try to control an out of control child, or having a mad parent in your face, threatening to kick your hiney. And because you got onto their child and their child was misbehaved. But so there's all sorts of stories out there to tell.
Their child is a saint, though.
Yes, they are. Until they're not.
So the third night of summer camp, you're just like, No wonder their
going
parents
back
sent
and
them.
finding the extra drugs that after a raid's already been made on the room and that sort of stuff.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I could imagine what kind of stories. 35 years. That's
Yeah, there's a bonanza of stories, and like I said, to protect the guilty and the innocent combined, well,
I bet there's enough to write a book.
yeah, if I'd have started it, but there again, I'd have to change the name,
Change
Change the
name,
names.
change locations.
change locations. Yeah,
There
That's
you
funny.
go. There you go. Well, we like to also, one of our questions is, have you intentionally looked up a song, listened to a song this past week or this, for you, this last month, whatever, and what was it, and what did it mean to you?
Well, it actually can tie back into funny stories, and we were preparing for our Maundy Thursday service and our Easter service at the same time. And the pastor sent in a request to do the song Rolling Stones by Lauren Daigle and to end the service with it as people left. And I was told that it was supposed to be at the end of Maundy Thursday, where it very specifically said, we want everybody to leave in a quiet, reverent spirit.
Mm.
Well, if you know the song, it's a jamming song. It's not a quiet, reverent song. It was actually intended for the Easter Sunday morning service.
Oh.
And I happened to have to be the one running the audio video equipment for the Maundy Thursday service.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hit the button and the song cranks in, and the pastor's in the front of the sanctuary and I'm in the back with the AV stuff, and he immediately stop the song. So we killed the song and found out that I was actually right. It was supposed to be an upbeat song for the end of the Easter service, not the Maundy Thursday service. But I did go listen to the song, and it kind of ties into the fact that, Jesus allowed the angels to roll the stone away.
Amen.
He didn't have to have them to do it. He could have just kind of waved his hand and it happened.
Mm.
And it reminded me, God still allows us to roll the stones away so people can see Jesus.
Yeah.
And that may not even be what the theme of the song was. It was the message I took away from it. It's just, Jesus lets me have that privilege of rolling stones away so students and seniors and people of all ages
Mm-hmm.
can see Jesus and see that he's out of the empty tomb, and he's alive and he's with us again. And so there's my song for the week with the funny story to go with it.
I think that
at the end of your Maundy Thursday.
That worked.
I think that worked. Yes, exactly. Well, Duane, pleasure having you on, and thank you so much for joining us and passing on. There was at least 30 wisdom nuggets in there. If you're to listen to the show, show 5 is going to be super awesome. So, thank you so much.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, and as Jacob and I continue on our Youth Pastors or Pastors 2 journey, we want to encourage you, whether you're a student pastor, youth pastor, children's volunteer, or a pastor, a good old senior pastor, and you tune in. We want to encourage you. That is our goal. Our goal is to share Jesus and encourage you to share Jesus and to lift you up. If you're in a rut and you need to yell at somebody, email us, call us. Don't yell at your senior pastor, yell at us. We'd rather you do that instead of get fired. But as Jacob said, you can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud. I feel like there's another place, but I guess there's not, huh?
YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube.
Oh yeah. We're not really promoting that, but
it's available if you want to see our pretty faces every week. Besides my beard today, it's Transformer blue on down the street, and it's not a good morning. So,
well, Duane, any final thought? Any last word?
Keep pressing on, brother. Keep pressing on. Don't give up in well doing, because in the end, we win.
Amen. That's good. Jacob?
I keep saying this every week, but I think this one might be the the best episode we had. Of course, I keep saying that after every episode we do, but yeah, I mean, we appreciate you coming and 35 years of wisdom, and send Brian Hall a message. We would like to have him on. He's a legend and of a
He's
song,
my hero.
So.
He's
My hero.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does what he does with. I mean, he's one of those guys that goes nonstop, and
Yes.
I used to meet with him like every couple of months, and so send him a message. Try to get him on here. We'll come up with a topic for Brian. He knows it all. He does it all. So
Yeah.
so yeah.
And still in the main of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he stays awake. Like we did. I went to his Mania Marathon in 2015, and Jacob went with me. And about 3 a.m., I just laid my head on the picnic table and I fell asleep. And
Brian Hall's still out there like dancing and stuff. Like
I couldn't go no more. Brian's still going, just going. And
yeah.
Well, anyways, you want to do this again next week?
Oh yeah.
All right, let's do it.